They told you never to trust anyone ever again. But what if that's the very thing that's hurting your marriage? Hi, everybody. We are Mike and Brenda Baker, and today we're going to be talking about emotional independence. Is it hurting your marriage? The truth no one talks about is what we're going to say today. So get ready.
So, emotional independence. There's a lot of trash out there right now about independence within the marriage. And what we want to do is set the record straight on emotional independence. Because what happens is you've got now remember, we're talking to the God-fearing community. Okay, if you're not God-fearing, this is probably not the podcast for you. However, that does not mean that you're not welcome to stick around in case you're curious. Okay, but keep in mind that we talk God here. So emotional independence, you've got all these things going on, like your truth and my truth, and well, I have to save myself in this relationship, or I have to protect myself, or I have to it's baloney. There's nothing scriptural about emotional independence. That's what we're going to talk about today. So emotional independence can be a coping mechanism, not necessarily a strength. The world wants you to believe it's a strength, but in truth, it's just a coping mechanism. It's what we do when we want to put up walls.
Right. And, like we've said many times in many, many other videos, we are not psychologists. We're not counselors. We're coaches. And we're going to shoot straight with you because we use the Bible as our guide. And that's what we've done pretty much our 30-year marriage going on. Anytime we have trouble or whatever, we go to the Word and we find out what it is that we ourselves need to do. And honestly, with this whole thing, what I see is that couples really want to blame all of the problems on the other spouse. That needs to stop. It's not helping your unity. It's not helping your marriage. It's actually harming it so much by thinking that you need to be this independent, woman. Come on. You need your husband, and your husband needs you if you're doing this marriage thing correct.
So, this is a little bit about redefining, what's the term?
Codependency?
Codependency. So codependency would suggest that it is a bad thing for you to align yourself so much with somebody else that you lose yourself. That's basically what they're saying. But what did we do when we became Christians? If indeed we are.
Yeah.
What did we do? We aligned ourselves more with him than with us, right? So if you go through Romans chapter 7 or 6, 7, and 8, it talks about how we are more spirit than we are flesh, which means by the very definition of codependency, we have become codependent on God. Now, let me push a little past that in the fact that the marriage is the representation of Christ and his bride. So if you are pushing your spouse away out of fear rather than pulling in to build intimacy, you are pushing against God's design. God's design is for you to be dependent on one another. That's why it talks about one flesh, which brings us into our second point. Second point is your marriage can't thrive if you're living in self-preservation mode. I run a TikTok page for the business I work for, and I run some YouTube stuff, and I run some LinkedIn stuff. I continuously see these women who ask the question, well, how many of you are sleeping in separate beds? That's not marriage. That's roommates, okay? I don't care if you're having sex. That's roommates with benefits. You are not going to convince me scripturally that you two are still seeking intimacy when you've separated the marriage in such a way, okay? Then I see this other new push. Well, a woman has to have a skill, and she has to have her own account to protect herself. Protect herself from what? From what? From her husband? Why do you need protection from your husband? Because you picked poorly? It's called self-responsibility. It's called step up and admit your mistakes and then fix the marriage. So as we become codependent on God, we are to a degree dependent upon our spouse, not to make us feel good, but because we're one flesh. We pour into them, they pour into us. That's exactly the way Scripture is set up.
Right. And so if you're a woman specifically, I'm going to talk to you for a minute. If you are sitting on the side where it's okay that you have this secret bank account, you have this this secret thing going, you're wrong. It's never going to work, because the way that a true marriage works is we both give and we both take. It doesn't mean we lose ourselves. It doesn't mean that we have to be only doing things with our spouse, sitting in the house with just our spouse. You should have friends as long as your spouse is cool with them and not of the opposite sex. But you should be out doing things. It's what creates this awesome balance with your husband, is being able to see your friends and be, in your friend group, but also being a wife and being a mom and taking care of the house. Now, if you choose to work, I understand your time is limited, but you can't sit there and say, well, my husband never helps me. I have to do everything all the time. Did you ask him? Did you ask him for help? Or did you ask him for help, and then when he did it the wrong way, it wasn't your way, did you then say, and so you've become this control freak where everything has to be your way. I'll give you an example. When we used to go with our 5 kids on a trip, I was in the mindset that it was up to me as to what everybody took, and to minimize my own stress, I created stress to make sure that everybody had all the things they needed. And usually what would happen is I would forget something that was kind of important, like, say, undergarments, right? And it created so much stress the week leading up to this fun vacation that it lost its sparkle. It lost all these things because I was so stressed out that by the time we left, pretty much everybody else was stressed out because of me, because I was just like, and I didn't have to do any of that. I could have, at the time, our older kids, we had 3 of them, and then we had 2 that were younger, substantially younger than the others. Mm-hmm. And what I could have done is I could have let go and let them be in charge of that. And I did later on when I started realizing this is not fun. It's not fun. So ladies, are you doing that? Are you creating your own stress because you want to be hyper independent, but you want your husband to read your mind and do all the things exactly the way that you would? That's ridiculous. It's never going to work. And especially in a remarriage situation. Because let's be honest, our mind has already been divorced once, which makes the second and third and fourth divorces even easier. Our brain tells us, ooh, if I'm not happy, I can just get divorced.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're teaching the kids what marriage should look like.
Now it might seem like we're harping on the women a bit, and quite honestly, we are.
Yeah.
Why? Because the title of this is Emotional Independence is Hurting Your Marriage. Sorry, but dudes are just not that emotional. Some are. And a lot of that has to do with the effeminization of men in culture. But as a general rule, men are not that emotional. And what you may not realize is it's not men who are asking for separate beds. It's not men who are stashing secret accounts. If a man has an account, a separate account for toys and whatnot, he will tell the wife. He doesn't care. That's his account. He's like, hey, this is for me to just, blow money on whatever. He may not actually suggest that she get one. And a lot of women will take, if a man tells his wife that, hey, I have this account just for toys, and he doesn't tell her, you should open one too, she will automatically, emotionally assume he doesn't want her to have one. That is not the way men work. Mm-hmm. If the wife were to look at the husband and say, well, that's a great idea, I think I want one too, 9 times out of 10, the guy is like, yeah, that's a great idea, set it up. Why? Because men aren't emotional. All right, but go ahead.
But at the same time, your husband probably wouldn't think to say, hey, hun, I've got this account and it's for playthings. Is that something that you want? It's not because most men don't actually want to be selfish like that. It's just not something that's right in front of them. And so they tend to forget about these things. It's okay. Calm down. Just if you want your own account for, play money, talk to him. Tell him why you want it.
And that was just an
it's
example.
okay. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I was just, that's something that I've heard quite often.
When something doesn't cross a man's mind, it's not because he hates you or he doesn't care about you or it just literally it never occurred to him to ask. Yeah. Because why? Because between men, he would say something like, oh yeah, I've got an account for this, and he would drop it, and the other dude would automatically think I should do that. He doesn't ask him for permission. He doesn't say, hey, what do you think? Should I do that? We just are very matter of fact, right? So if you don't say something, it's not because he doesn't care about you. It literally has not even occurred to him that maybe you want one. Why? Because we're very focused on what we're doing at the moment. That's part of what being male is. That's why we're able to accomplish some of the things we can, is because of our singular focus. We don't have thoughts that go everywhere all the time like women do, and that's not a bad thing. Women need that to do all the things that they do. That's why God complemented us with each other. But, so back to the protecting. If you're trying to protect yourself instead of committing fully to the marriage, did you catch that? If you are trying to protect yourself, you are not committing fully. A step out of the bedroom to your own bedroom is a step out of the marriage. A step to having two separate accounts and never mixing money, that's a step out of the marriage. Not taking the last name, step out of the marriage. A secret account he doesn't know about, huge step out of the marriage. Huge step. Anything that separates you two as anything but one flesh. This is not a partnership. It's not a business. Now, there are some business aspects to marriage, sure, but this is covenant. It's not contract. Yeah. Okay? I've said it before. Transactions can happen within the marriage, but marriage itself is not transactional. This is not a roommate with benefits situation. You are married. And a blended marriage is exactly the same as a regular marriage. It has to follow all the same rules. It just has more baggage. So with that comes more rules. But let's go into number 3. The real strength is learning on how to depend on each other without losing yourself. Remember, I keep saying one flesh, one flesh. Well, that's Genesis 2:24. A man shall leave his father and mother and shall cleave to his wife. What does that mean? That means mom and dad are no longer number 1, they're number 2. And you know what else happens? When kids come along, mom and dad become number 3 because they have their own lives to live now. They didn't just extend the family, they have started a whole new family. Okay? So, real strength, learning how to depend on each other without losing yourself. You can be one flesh while being your own person, but emotional independence, as the world would dictate it, will tear that in half.
Yeah. And really, on the same page as, real strength, real maturity is, using all of your wisdom to do what's right in your marriage so that it can grow. And I think that's, a lot of these concepts have been twisted, and Satan is crafty. He wants you to fail. He wants your marriage to fail because when it does, then the kids will trust marriage even less. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you had a rough first marriage. It's time to heal from those things so that you can have the strength and the wisdom / maturity to be able to trust your spouse in the best way, in God's way. And so that's all you're going to hear from us because it's of utmost importance. Emotional independence isn't the thing. Proper dependence upon your spouse in a healthy, balanced way is perfect. That's what God says is perfect in marriage.
So trust is mostly an emotion and partly a logical deal too. Yeah. Okay, you have to have trust in the marriage. If you say that you trust your husband implicitly and have a secret account, you do not trust your husband implicitly. It's a lie. So quit saying it. All right, just be honest. Mm-hmm. The one thing I'll purport here more than anything else is just be honest. If you don't like the guy, say you don't like the guy. If you don't like the lady, say you don't like the lady. But quit beating around the bush and pretending it's something it isn't. Okay, see, the challenge here is, what if emotional dependence in the right way is actually the key to a long-lasting marriage? Emotional dependence, not independence, dependence, where you put implicit trust in your partner. Now, we're talking the blended space, and implicit trust was easy the first time, super hard the second time, or maybe even the third time. And I get that, but that implicit trust is absolutely required for a long-lasting marriage, because it is the basis of everything. Why do I say it's part logic and mostly emotion? Because logically, you'll think, yes, I absolutely have to trust this individual. Yeah. But when trust is broken, it is an emotional, chaotic storm. Betrayal is a huge deal. It's an emotion. So keep in mind that the Lord uses this as a tool to keep people together, not tear them apart. You must be able to trust each other. And if you feel like you have to have that account, you have to move that bedroom, then you guys need help. You need help. Quit playing the, oh no, it's normal. I know lots of people that do it. Okay, lots of people are wrong.
Yep.
Wrong. And I would strongly caution that, because you cannot find in Scripture where that is a scriptural move on your part. Okay? You are tearing tiny tears in the fabric of trust in your marriage, and your husband is not going to tell you that. He's just going to harbor it until it comes to a head.
Right. And we would also say that, your circle matters. It matters to your remarriage. It matters to your parenting. It matters. So be wary when you meet new friends. I'm not saying don't trust. I'm just saying watch. What kind of a marriage do they have? Is that the kind of marriage that you want? It's really important to think about these things so that your immediate circle are a circle of happy, well-adjusted, marriages. Because even if they're not a blended family, they can, push you along in the right direction of, love, trust, dependency in healthy, good ways. So, anything else?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this whole thing is, it would be better for you, and we're talking primarily about the marriage, but since Brenda brought up friends, it would be better for you and your husband to have no friends at all than to have the wrong friends.
Yes.
The wrong friends will tear a marriage to pieces. No friends at least means that you have each other.
Right. That's all?
That's all.
Okay, so with that, we thank you so very much for being here, and we hope that we imparted some of our wisdom that we've learned over the past 30 years of being married and just really learning how to do this remarriage in the best way possible. And we want that for you. We want you to have this remarriage be your last marriage. So follow along, come along with us as we teach you more in the coming episodes. We thank you so very much for being here, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.